joining us for this month's episode of This Is My Story. In this podcast, we will sit down and talk to someone who has a powerful story of transformation because of what Jesus did in their life.
My name is John Stroup, and this is my story.
Well, hey, man, it's a privilege and honor to have John Stroup here for This Is My Story podcast. And, man, I've known you for a few years now, and I feel like everybody knows you around here. But, man, it's just an honor to have you, and we're excited to hear your story. And I know so many people have heard your story. So many people haven't heard your story, but, man, it's one of the most powerful stories I've ever heard of reconciliation. And, man, God's just done incredible things with you, man. We're just glad to have you here, brother.
Good to be with you.
Oh, man. So, dude, tell us, we know, Freeway Ministries and John Stroup and all that. And, the guy, I remember one of my first encounters with you, someone was like, yeah, have you seen the pastor guy who has this tattoo right here? And he's just doing crazy things on the north side. I'm like, no, not yet. Cause I just moved back to Springfield. It didn't take very long to, figure out who you were and dude, I heard your heart. And I remember just, trying to figure out like, okay, what's he like? Is he going to be friendly or, is he going to be, kind of territorial? And dude, you were the most, God-centered person I'd ever met. We go to different churches, different, denominations, and man, that just was never a barrier to you, man. You're just all about the kingdom of God. And so, man, I just appreciate your heart. And has that just always kind of come natural for you just to be all about the kingdom and not about other churches or you're not being about just one church, but, so many different churches? Where does that come from?
Well, I believe that you have to figure out what you believe.
Yeah.
And so, there's denominations for a reason.
Yeah.
We have different, we see the Bible interpreted different ways.
Yeah.
And so, I'm Baptist, you're Nazarene.
Right.
You're all right for Nazarene, you know what I mean? And
I love it,
I'm
man.
just kidding.
No, I love it.
But, so, division would come, in my opinion, if we did not have those different denominations, because we would be arguing in Sunday school class. And so I'm not that guy.
Right.
I just say get in where you fit in.
Yeah.
And it's about the big kingdom. There ain't gonna be no Nazarenes in heaven.
Yep.
There ain't gonna be no Baptists in heaven. And we're all gonna be Christians.
Man.
We're all gonna be serving the Lord, and God will sort us out later. So
I love it, man.
Yeah.
I love that heart. So, Ben, for those that don't know about Freeway, kind of tell them what that is and what all you guys have been able to do, over the, many years now.
Well, Freeway does. We're real good at a couple things. We're good at discipleship and evangelism, and missions. So what I do, my job is to plant ministries. There's two faucets of. So one is to plant ministries alongside local churches to reach the hard to reach with the gospel. One of the phrases, two things we really try to brand is running after people must run from, and one broken life at a time.
I love it.
And so my job is to create a ministry, an outreach on a weekly basis alongside a local church that happens on a non-traditional, non-church night. So we don't want to compete with the church.
Right.
And the outreach is ran by church members. And so what that church does is that church does the evangelism. That church does the preaching, the teaching, the worship, and all that. And what they do is they go after this demographic of people that wouldn't shadow the doors of a church.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the night, we do everything a church does at Freeway. But at the end of the night, we invite them to a local church. Yeah. So we say, if you don't have a home church on Sunday, hey, guess what? Even though you may be freaked out about church people, these are all church people. Yeah. And they want you to come to church on Sunday.
Love it.
And then and so it gives the church a way to do missions. Yeah. And then it I say create missionaries out of church members, and because we should be on mission all the time. Yeah. And then also what we do is we create what I call discipleship houses, which is a year-long program, homes for men and women to live in, where they can go to a safe place where there's no drugs, there's no alcohol, there's nobody abusing them or using drugs around them. And that house is a discipleship home. So basically, I tell people we're not a recovery program, really. We are, but we're not. We're a discipleship ministry. And so we invest in men and women from the intimate details of their lives, from their work ethic to their attitude, to how they respond to correction, to how they clean the house, how they talk to authority, how they respect authority, to their work ethic. They all are involved in a local church. They miss church, they get kicked out. I tell churches there'd be a lot of homeless church members if that was the case here, but our people don't miss church.
Yeah.
And they all have to give back to the community, to live in the home. So we're teaching them how to live. They work every single day, Monday through Friday, and then they have class every single evening except for one night. They're mentored by men and women in the local church. And then when they graduate, they already know how to live.
Yeah.
They're doing it already.
Right.
Like they have money in the bank. They have an emergency fund.
Yeah.
Not one of our people don't have an emergency fund.
Yeah.
Like 6 months in our program, they have thousands of dollars saved on their own. They could go get it out if they want to.
Right.
And so when they leave the program, they are ready to live the rest of their lives.
I love it.
And we've had 12 graduate this year.
Wow.
Our statistics say that 90 to 95% of those people will not go back to drugs or crime.
Wow.
So
how long is the process? If somebody's listening to this, or two questions. Number one, man, I have a loved one, or man, I'm strung out and I need help, John. Can anybody go to the home? What's that look like?
So our website is freeway-ministries.com.
Okay.
And there's an application process.
Yep.
I tell people this all the time. It makes them mad at me. But we're not a homeless shelter.
Yeah.
We're not a detox center. We're a discipleship program.
Yeah.
And so we vet people. Part of our success is our vetting system.
Yeah.
We don't know, for instance, you can't talk to women in our program if you're a man.
Yeah.
We search phones.
Right.
If I catch you talking to a girl, you're going to lose your phone for 30 days.
Yeah.
And if you buck that, then you just go ahead and pack up and go home.
Right.
We drug test each other randomly twice a month.
Yeah.
So you got to think about this. You got ex-convicts drug testing each other,
Right.
Twice a month.
Yeah.
And, we're breaking a criminal mentality. So my philosophy is if I wouldn't live with you, I won't ask you to live with them. And so if I wouldn't live with the person, I won't ask our people to live with them.
Yeah.
So, so how do you get in the program? You go to the website, freewayministries.com. You print an application off. You read the rules. You fill the application out. You send the application in.
Yeah.
All of it's one document. It tells you how to fill it out, all that, where to send it. And if you're on the street and you say, well, I want to come to the program, I'll give you homework. I'll see if you're serious.
Right. Because a lot of people act like they're excited, but not very many, are willing to go through it, right?
I could make the application where you could fill it out online, but then you don't have to work.
Right.
You can do it on your phone.
Yeah.
But I want you to print it out. I want you to do the work.
Yeah.
And if they say, well, I don't have a computer, and this is what I'll say. If I told you I'd give you an 8-ball of dope, if you printed something out, filled it out, and sent it to me, how long would it take you to do it?
Man, that's good.
And the reason you'll do it is because you're motivated.
Yeah.
So that's how we weed people out. Turn the application in, and we vet you from there.
I love it. And so, how many homes do you have now?
Well, we have, including Omaha and Cape Town, South Africa, in Omaha, Nebraska, there's 8.
Wow.
And one of them's a next step house.
Okay.
So that's for people who graduated and they want to continue in the
for the next
program.
phase.
And it's a lot less strict.
Wow.
So.
And then, the huge thing that you and your team have put on the past few years in Springfield is Save Our City. And you just finished that last week, and here you are with us, man. We're so thankful for you to take that time. But so Save Our City, the Lord just put that on your heart, right? And how many years have you been doing this now?
4.
4 years, and you're reaching thousands of people every year. But I mean, a lot of people, they just think it's for the drug addicts and things like that. But man, it's to bring awareness, right? I remember hearing you on the radio the other day, man, just telling people that there's people around us, man, our loved ones, friends and family that are struggling, that people don't even realize that they're struggling with drugs, and you've done an incredible job of just reaching our community. But why do you think so many people struggle to reach out to those that are struggling with drugs and don't even really have a heart for them? Why do you think that is?
Well, there's a few reasons. Save Our City came about because I had a chief of police call me from Dixon, Missouri. His name is Gary Don Brinkle. And he went in there like walking tall with a big stick and got out all the bad seeds of the police department and they voted him. I think he's the first ever chief of police there. And he called me for help. And in this conversation, he said, help me save my city.
Wow.
And that's where I got Save Our City.
Wow.
God seared it in my heart from that conversation. And so one of the things that I want to communicate to the world and to the church world is how valuable one radically changed drug addict or criminal is.
Yeah.
So I don't think people get it. I tell folks all the time when I get to preach revivals, I tell the church, addicts make the best Christians. Mm-hmm. And some people don't like me to say that. They get a little, in their box or whatever. But we know what the darkness is like.
Yeah. We've
been there, right? And we have an addicted personality. Mm-hmm. And so whenever we get a hold of something, we can't quit.
Yeah.
And so the church many times, one, they don't have the tools. They don't believe the Bible.
Yeah.
People don't believe it. They don't believe that God can still take a man with 1,000 demons and change him into a preacher.
Right.
But the Bible says that it can happen.
Right.
People don't believe that God could call a fisherman who's uneducated and unlearned and use him to open the keys of the kingdom of God.
Right.
Use him to, like he did Peter. Jesus still calls people by name. Jesus still reaches those kind of people. He sits in the middle of all the tax collectors and the sinners, and he looks at the church and he says, how valuable are they to you?
Right.
And so the Church of Jesus Christ, I mean, honestly, I don't believe that many people think that they can be reached. I don't think that they believe in the power of the gospel.
Yeah.
I think that, a lot of people just go to church on Sunday because that's what you do on Sunday. And then the other thing is, I think that they don't have the tools. Exactly. They don't know what to do.
That's a good point.
And so what do I do?
Yeah.
How do I help? What resources do I have? Like I was telling you earlier before we started, if I had 100 pastors in this room, and you can name all the pastors you want, the best ones you know, and I said, how many of you know how to check someone into detox?
Right.
What do you do if someone calls you and they say, I want to go to detox? What do you do?
Yeah.
Well, they call the recovery ministry.
Right.
Do you know how to do it?
Right.
Do you know how to set boundaries with a parent who's enabling a loved one? Do you know what steps to take? And so I just think that they don't have the tools and that they don't think that it's really doable.
Right. And that's really what the heart behind your whole ministry, man. It's never been about you. And that's what I love, man. You've always been about the kingdom, and you've always been about helping people. And dude, that just radiance off you, brother. And I know for me personally, obviously you had me, speak at Save Our City, which I was so thankful. But, my own family, you've helped me, navigate through some of that stuff. And, I grew up in that, family, and the Lord rescued me at a pretty young age. But man, there's been some things where I'm like, I don't know what to do here. And I've reached out to you and as we planted the Well Church, I was addicted to drugs and come from a family that was, drug addicts and notoriously known from around here. But man, I was limited within my experience, and I was limited within my ability to help. And so it was at Save Our City, you were speaking, man, the Lord just said, Dylan, your church needs this. And I was like, absolutely. And it wasn't a matter of that we didn't want to. We were reaching some, but we just didn't have the skill set, to be able to help them. And we knew that, man, we had to start that ministry. And now we have that Redemption and Brandon Lean. And I know you guys have been able to connect with, man. I know there's people just at our church, man, that are eternally grateful just because of your obedience and, because of you paving the way, showing the way, leading the way. That is, that made us do some inventory, with ourselves. And, I remember early on, we'd have those green shirts and just go and volunteer at Freeway. And I was like, this is the church, man. And I grew up on the north side of Springfield. I'm like, man, if I had some people like this, when I was a kid, just there who loved me, it would have helped me so much. I wouldn't have made some poor decisions. And man, you guys are doing that. And I want to say thank you, number one, just for your heart. But number two, man, a lot of times we see, the polished John Stroup version, now Freeway director and a man of God who's preaching anywhere and everywhere, right? But it wasn't always like that, right? And obviously, man, you have, stories that you've shared with people of how you've come to get sober and how you've been, Jesus changed your life. But can you share with us here today, just what was your background like, growing up, and what was the family background? When did you begin to get in that lifestyle and things like that?
So I'm going to plug my book.
Yeah.
Pit to the Pulpit, From the Pit to the Pulpit. It's my story, and I made it more about God and other people than it is about me.
Yeah.
And if you read that, you'll see it's kind of a devotional book too. But tried to hit as many birds as I could with one rock.
Yeah.
I share my childhood and stuff like that. But growing up, I was raised by a single mom. My dad died when I was a baby. I was 2 years old, whatever. And so my mom, I didn't know any of his family, still don't. And my mom moved me and her away to a little bitty town called Perryville, Missouri. My brothers were old enough to be my fathers, and my sisters were old enough to be my mothers. And so I was a baby. I wasn't even supposed to become. My mom had me super late. And so they were all grown with kids of their own when I was born. And so my mom took me to Perryville. And my brothers were in prison my whole life, off and on. Yeah. So I grew up in the prison visiting room. Okay. A lot of kids grow up, remembering, all these different things during their childhood. I remember prison visiting rooms from my childhood. And I remember my mom, tying up bags of dope in balloons and putting them in her bra at the table before we went to go on the visit in front of me. And so, because she was going to give them to my brothers, you know. Well, one visit, my mom went on a prison visit at MSP, Missouri State Penitentiary, when it's called the Old Walls. Was the bloodiest mile on earth. For a long time, it was the nickname. Well, my Uncle Bob, who I really don't know on my mom's side, he burned our house down when we were on a prison visit. He torched it. So my mom, I'm in second grade. My mom called my grandma just to check, see how things were going, payphone, back then. And she said, "I'm so glad you're alive. The fire department's trying to put the fire out. Bob's burnt the house down. He's gone into the woods, So my mom started off in Jeff City, Missouri on a prison visit with a second grader. And that's how I began in Jeff City. I'm from Jeff City. Jeff City is where I was raised. Okay. Jeff City, Missouri, Jefferson City. If you're not from there, you call it Jefferson City. But so we grew up in the projects. I was labeled with a behavior disorder from the very beginning. They put me in a class for the bad kids. Yeah. Gave me a bad kid label. A stereotype is a defined, fixed idea about a person, place, or thing. And so I had a stereotype on me. Right. I was a bad kid. Yep. BD, behavior disorder. And I had LD, BD. I was BD, learning disabled, behavior disorder. And anyway, so there I was in this class, for the bad kids, and didn't have a father, brothers in and out of prison my whole life. The masculine men I looked up to was outlaws, bad guys, drug dealers, drug addicts. As soon as I was able, my mom and I, my mom was my best friend. I remember my mom sitting at the table, and I would have this big old bowl of raviolis, that's the kind of stuff we ate, family can. Right. And then grilled cheese, and my mom wouldn't have any food, and I'd say, "Well, what are you doing? Are you going to eat?" And she'd say, "Well, I ate already." Well, I realized later on in life she gave me one good meal, so she didn't, instead of both of us having two smaller meals, she went without. She didn't eat. And so my mom loved me. I'm just going to tell you that. Like nobody did. She did the best she could in her own understanding. But with that being said, my mom came to me, and she had 2 checks. And she said, "This is the bills, this is the income. As a teenager, we're going to have to start doing something." And so I knew all the drug dealers. Yeah. And so I went and got dope, and we started selling drugs together. And that's when my I don't want to call it a career, but that's when I began to sell drugs. Right. So I sold the drugs, she handled the money. Bills started getting paid. Wow. Everything like that. And then I started. You were young. I was a young teenager. Yeah. And then I started using drugs. And then I started using harder drugs. And I became a drug addict. And in 1998, I was addicted to crack. I was addicted to, as a teenager, I was addicted to crack. I was addicted to cocaine. Smoked it like a broke stove. Got all my friends high. My house was a party house. Right. Do whatever I wanted. My mom had chronic emphysema. She ended up dying. A year after my mom died, my brother I had a brother overdose. The year after that, my brother shot my other brother over drugs. Really? Point blank range, broad daylight. And wow. I will say my brother that got shot, he lived. He took 4 shots from a .380 and lived. One in the head, one in the neck, maybe 2 in the head, I don't know, but he, broad daylight. Hunted him down, shot him. So my world was wrecked. I went from the drug dealer to the drug addict to the drug addict to the dope fiend. I was homeless, living on the street. I had nowhere to go. Nobody would let me come around them. I was robbing people. I was a creature of the night. Yeah. And so that was the dark. I mean, I stunk. I didn't care about my hygiene. You could smell me before I came close to you. I'm just telling you, man, I'm not boasting in that. I'm not proud of that. But I was in real bad shape.
Did you know it at that point in time?
Yeah. I didn't care.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was an IV junkie. I didn't think I would live another day.
Yeah.
I've had police officers in Jeff City, roll up on me and say, we're going to find you dead one day.
Yeah.
You're not going to make it.
Yeah.
You need to get help. Never went to rehab in my whole life.
Yeah.
Didn't even know what it was, really.
Right.
And, in and out of jail, constantly in jail. Bondsman wouldn't bond me out because I was a runner. I was unbondable.
Right.
So even if it was a $200 bond, I wasn't getting out.
Yeah.
So.
Man, was your mom still around during that point in time?
No, my mom would have bonded me out.
Yeah.
My mom would have enabled me.
Yeah.
But she passed away in 1998. So.
Wow. So, there you are, addicted to the drugs. Your family's a mess. You don't really have anybody you can rely on. But God was never there, right? I mean, obviously He was there for us. We didn't know it, but you weren't raised in the church. Were you aware of God in your life? I mean, was He, were you aware of His presence or not really?
I believe in the sovereignty of God.
Yeah.
And so it's an attribute of God where He's never been surprised.
Yeah.
He's never learned anything.
Yeah.
There's nothing He doesn't know. He's not in a hurry. He's not late.
Right.
That's the God I serve.
Amen.
And so He had a plan for me.
That's right.
And He was calling me. And I didn't realize that. But I don't have any, we never went to church.
Yeah.
No Bible in my house. I don't know anyone that was ever a Christian.
Yeah.
Never knew a pastor. And so, but God was calling me.
Yeah.
And then when I went to jail, I was on the run. I had the fugitive task force after me.
Yeah.
I sold some drugs to a girl who she had her house rigged up with cameras and stuff, and she set me up. She was really trying to set someone else up, this guy named Gary. And the motion of discovery, which is, if you don't know what that is, it's the evidence the state has against you when they charge you with something. It's all their evidence.
Yeah.
And they have to give you that. And so the motion of discovery, it had this other guy's name on the whole thing. And then I took the drugs in the house because I was with him.
Yeah.
I had a warrant. We're outside of this lady's house. Him and his girlfriend are arguing because this girl's a prostitute. And you ain't going in there. I just said, give it to me. And I went in and sold it, gave it to her, got the money for him. But I wouldn't tell on him. And so I took the case. And anyways, I was on the run, and they ended up, I was in a standoff, a hostage standoff with no hostage, on Monroe and Hickory Street in Jeff City. They thought I had a gun, and I was in there almost 4.5 hours. I wouldn't come out.
Really?
And I was hiding in a bedroom closet. I'll never forget this. And I could see the red beams coming by the door, but they wouldn't come in there because they thought I had a gun, because I was accused of shooting this guy's house up a couple days before. Wow. And he had told him I had a gun, but I didn't have one. And I ended up coming out and giving up and surrendered to them. And then I went to jail, and I went to prison and ended up giving my life to Jesus in a prison cell.
Right. So tell me what that was like. As you see those red dots, man, were you telling them, like, man, I don't got a gun? Or you just, like, do you even remember that? Like, all the sounds and all that? I
was quiet as a mouse.
Really?
Because I thought that with a criminal background, if they really could come get me and they knew I was in here, why aren't they in here?
Yeah. There's
something holding them back.
Yeah.
They must not be able to legally come get me unless they know I'm in here, is what I'm thinking. I'm going to hold them out.
Yeah.
And, but that, the reason they didn't come in is because they thought I had a pistol. I almost made them shoot me because I didn't want to live. All my family was in prison or dead. My nephews got indicted who were like my brothers. My brother got indicted, federally indicted, and for selling lots of drugs. And I didn't have nobody. I thought my life was over. But I ended up telling them I'm coming out with my hands up. I'm going to surrender. And I did. And they took me to jail.
Man.
And, and so I could finally rest. And I ended up finding a prison Bible in Fulton. I said, I just want to do my time. Yeah. I had a 5-year backup. I just want to do my time. Yeah. And my lawyer had told me it was against his. He could argue and not, because it was my first felony. Yeah. And I said, no, I just want to do my time. I need to get away.
Really?
So they gave me 5 years. And in a prison cell, I found a Bible. It was a free on the inside prison Bible. And I wanted to know what Jesus did with bad guys.
Wow.
Because I was one.
Yeah.
And I knew who I was. I was bad.
Yeah.
And Romans 3, in Romans 3, it says, there's none good, no, not one. There's none who seek after God. We've all gone astray and gone our own way. And so I thought, man, there's none good.
Wow.
There's none good. And Jesus came to seek and save the lost.
That's right.
That's his nature.
I love it.
When Adam sinned, the very first time man sinned against God, he came seeking man.
Right.
He came and said, Adam, where are you at?
That's right.
And so then I said, well, if we're all bad, that's great news to a bad guy, But that's terrible news to people who think they're good.
Yeah.
Because there aren't any good people.
Yeah.
Jesus didn't come to save good
That's
people.
right.
Because there are none. And so I began to look and say, well, if God could God use a man like me?
Yeah.
And I found out that I was a poster child for Christianity. And I gave him my life. And I remember telling God, I don't have anything to offer you. I don't have any money. I don't have, I don't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
When I leave prison, I'm homeless.
Yep.
And I don't have nobody to send me any money in prison. I live off $5 a month, 5 postage stamps, a stick of deodorant, a stick of toothpaste. I didn't have a prison visit. I never made one phone call, Dylan.
Wow.
I didn't have nobody to call. And but I asked God to use me like the dope used me and give me a purpose. And I surrendered my life to him.
I like that. Say that again, where you want God to use you like the dope used you. That's a powerful statement, man.
Use me like the dope used me.
So what was that like, when Jesus became real to you? Did you feel his love? Was that like love unlike you'd ever experienced before?
I don't know about an experience and a feeling.
Right.
I got a hunger.
Yeah.
It was hunger for me and thirst.
And desperate.
And the Bible says that those who hunger and thirst for righteousness shall be filled.
That's right.
And in the original language, it really means those alone.
Yeah.
Only them people.
That's right.
And, the word filled in the Bible, it means controlled by. And, I was controlled by God. He gave me a hunger and he gave me a thirst. And all I wanted to do was know him.
Yeah.
And so I began to read. And I began to read. I never read a book in my life. I began to read. He gave me the gift to study the word.
Yeah.
And so I literally would have to ask people to borrow paper because I didn't have any. Borrow pen. They got them old flimsy gel pens, and I'm just writing these verses down, underlining these verses, copying, making notes, studying. And I remember I read my Bible till it fell apart, and then it fell in half.
Yeah.
And it didn't have no front or no binder, no cover, and it was held together with a sticker from my deodorant.
Oh, wow.
So, and I still have that.
I was going to ask you, I bet you still have that one, don't you?
Yeah, it's the Ark of the Covenant was where the mercy seat was, where they made the sacrifices, and the blood of the atonement, the Day of Atonement would go there. And inside the Ark of the Covenant, which represents the presence of God,
right,
were, Aaron's rod that budded, the pieces of the Ten Commandments, manna sent from heaven, and these are things that God had them put in there to remind them that these were times that God moved where no man could have done anything. Right. And my Ark of the Covenant has that prison Bible in it, and a Ziploc to remind me of the power of God.
Yeah. Dude, I love that. So, when you were in there, did you automatically, find other God-fearers, or were you kind of alone in there?
Well, I got in church.
Yeah.
I got involved in church, and I signed up for every service.
Yeah.
And, I had a lot of questions that I didn't have answers to.
Yeah.
And so I was there. I didn't even know there was any other Christian music besides hymns. I didn't even know what a Baptist or a Pentecostal or a Nazarene was. I had no clue. All I knew was Jesus, man.
That's right. I love it, man. So then what was that like? I mean, so you did 5 years. Did you do the full 5 years?
I did 18 months.
18 months.
I did 6 months intense treatment on the way out. And then I'm a first-time drug offender.
Yeah.
I have 1 felony, and it's a drug offense, which I should have only done a couple months on each year.
Yeah.
But I did more than that.
Yeah.
And so I did 18 months.
And so when you got out, what did that look like? Because a lot of people, I'm just be real with my family, like a lot of people, they'll, like you said, I love how, you said it wasn't just an experience, because a lot of people have experiences with Jesus, but man, you had that hunger, man, you had that thirst for God, but a lot of people get out and they go back to their old ways, and for you, that was never the case. What was that like? How were you able to just continue to, seek the Lord like that and be strong?
A lot of people have experiences when they listen to Motley Crue.
Yeah, exactly.
Or when they watch a movie on TV or watch a commercial.
Yeah.
So, I was reading my Bible like my life depended on it, and
because it did.
Yeah, it does today still. And I talked to guys today, and I was talking to a guy and with our internship program, and I told him he's trying to convince me that he's not going to make the same mistake these other guys have made. And I said, well, how come? He said, because I'm different than they are. And I said, I want you to say that one more time and listen to what you just said, because you're not different.
Yeah.
And I'm not different. So I think, honestly, one of the biggest things is knowing how weak you are. D.L. Moody said, there are no great men of God. There are only weak, frail men used by God.
Right.
And so Peter said, be watchful, because your adversary, the devil, walks around like a roaring lion seeking who he may devour. So be diligent, steadfast in your prayers. And so for me, I know today could be the day. And so I am like a person, I see myself as somebody who's in active duty combat, man. And I'm paying attention every day because I know I'm guarding myself, I'm protecting myself, I'm watching myself, I'm making sure that I have boundaries in my life, because I'm not foolish enough to think that I've got this.
Right.
And so when I got out of prison, I knew one thing: I couldn't go back to Jeff City.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
I knew that God had a plan for my life, and I didn't know what it was. So, on my way out of prison, about 4 months into my prison sentence, I got an address from a missionary that was retired from Africa. His name's Dewey Houston, Pentecostal man. And I had all these questions that I didn't have answers to, like, what's the book of Jasher? It talks about the book of Jasher in the Old Testament. Who's the Queen of Sheba?
Right.
Who wrote the book of John? Was it John the Baptist?
Right.
Who's Saul? Is he Old Testament Saul? Is New Testament Saul?
Right.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so, I got a cellmate who was from Springfield, and he said, his name David Hutman. He said, I got somebody you can write. There's an old man that's retired, and he has a ministry writing prisoners. And I said, please give me his address. So I lived off $5 a month in prison. And with that $5 a month, I bought a stick of deodorant, a stick of toothpaste, 5 postage stamps. Those 5 postage stamps was for Dewey.
Wow.
And I wrote him, he wrote me back. Every week he wrote me a letter, and every week I wrote him back. He was the one person I wrote on a regular basis and wrote me. And when I got out of prison, I went into a program called Fort Good Shepherd in Cuba. There was no jobs, no work. And I'm not bashing them.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, God shut that down.
Yeah.
And I wasn't supposed to be there for very long.
Yeah.
That was God's plan. And I called Dewey on my first time I could get to a phone.
Yeah.
And I was so poor, I didn't even have clothes to wear out of prison. They had a box of donated clothes, and they just said, find something that you can wear. And it didn't fit me. It was all tight. I had $5 on a little card, and I remember being at the Greyhound bus station in Kansas City, and I was hungry and thirsty, and I didn't have enough money to get a bag of chips and a bottle of and a soda. And I was broken. I felt like, it was tough, man. And I remember thinking in my heart, is this really going to work,
Right.
So I get to Fort Good Shepherd, and I called Dewey Houston the next day, and I said, Mr. Houston, this is John Stroup. Thank you for writing me all them years, or all them months, and you didn't even know me. And he said, I've been writing prisoners for 13 years, and you're the first one to ever get out and thank me.
Really?
Really. And I'm thinking what you're thinking. Why did he keep doing it?
Yeah.
And the reason he kept doing it was the motivation of God. His motivation was the faithfulness of God. His motivation was the faithfulness of God. My motivation is the faithfulness of God. I know that as long as I do what God says he blesses, he's going to bless me. And I know as long as I abstain from the things he says he hates and he stands against, he's not going to stand against me.
Right.
And so, I've just trusted the faithfulness of God, and it's gotten me a long way. And so I'm continuing to live the way I lived. Yeah. I've not stopped reading my Bible every day. I'm not boasting in that, but there hasn't been a day I haven't read my Bible since I've been saved, brother.
Still desperate.
And I need God's grace. The Bible says that he resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. So therefore, humble yourself under the mighty hand of God. And he says he will give grace to the humble. And that word give it's constant. It never stops. And so what God tells us through James is that God continues to give grace to the humble, and God continues to stand and resist the proud. And so Paul told Timothy, he said, be strong in the grace that's in Christ Jesus. So how do I get strength? I get strength from being humble. And humility brings me to grace.
Yeah.
And that grace is where I found my strength. And so as long as I continue to seek God's grace, as long as I continue to recognize that I'm weak and frail and I need him every day, I'm going to continue to be able to walk with him like I'm walking with him.
That's good. Did you ever get to meet him? The guy that you were writing?
He became like a father to me.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah. He 21 days after out of prison, he came and picked me up from Fort Good Shepherd.
Really?
This crazy old man. And he's in his 70s or 80s. I don't know how old he was. But
that had to have been a crazy experience. You're like, here we go, man.
I can't believe I'm in his car. He was a superstar to me.
Yeah.
You know, he had a little bookstore at Praise Assemblies of God in Springfield. And, you know, he made cookies for the recovery ministry there. And him and his wife, Connie. Well, he takes me to Springfield to the Salvation Army to see if they'll give me a shot. So I show up at the Salvation Army. I got a pass from my parole officer to go to Springfield to see if I can find a place to stay.
Yeah.
So I get to the Salvation Army, and they say they'll take me. But I got to get a police check, and they're about to close. So as long as my warrant check comes in good, I'm fine.
Yeah.
So Dewey's taking me back to the Fort Good Shepherd, and he says, you're going to have to pack your bags and stay with me tonight. And but my parole officer didn't give me permission to move. My parole officer gave me permission to go see if I could find a place. So I'm in a bind now.
Yeah. Because
I'll get violated if I leave without getting permission.
Right.
Change of residency, it's a violation. So I'm telling him, listen, I just can't. He didn't understand.
Yeah.
And I remember calling this after 5 o'clock. I called the probation office and tried to get on my parole officer. I'm thinking, I just got to stay here now. And it was after 5 o'clock. It's like 6 o'clock. My parole officer called me from his house and said, you got permission to move.
Wow.
And so I packed my bags up. Dewey Houston shows up with me in his house. His
Probably
wife
never thought you'd be living with no missionary.
His wife didn't even know I was coming. And she looked at me and looked at him like, this guy's going to cut us up and put us in the freezer. And when we go to sleep, you know. But anyways, I moved into the homeless shelter, 636 North Boonville Avenue, Springfield, Missouri. And I began my journey here in Springfield in the Harbor House.
Wow. That's powerful. So when did the ministry and all that come about, man? How many years was that after you were released from prison, and what was that like?
So I was released from prison September 2000. Actually, wow, this is September 21st. I don't know what the date is, but September 21st, 2009.
Today's the 16th.
Yeah, so that's when I was released from prison.
Wow.
And so I ended up in Springfield 21 days after I got out of prison. I'm in Springfield. And you know, I had a guy in prison give me these commentaries printed out. He helped prisoners with GDs. He's a highly intelligent man named Rudolph Walker, and he gave me all these commentaries. I didn't even know what a commentary was. Yeah. And I began to devour these commentaries. And so God was getting me ready. And I mean, I just had a hunger to study and learn, and it was just incredible. But,
did you feel like God at that point in time in prison? Did you think, man, maybe God's calling me to the ministry, or was that just so far-fetched?
I didn't even know what ministry was.
Really?
But I knew he was calling me to it.
Yeah. I
didn't even know what ministry was.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would learn a truth and share it, and I believed what I was saying was true.
Right.
I had the gift. God gave me the gift of faith to believe him. And Romans 12 says, let no man think more highly of themselves than they ought to think. God has dealt each one a portion of faith. And so my faith comes from God. And so God gave me faith to believe him. God gave me a hunger and a thirst for righteousness. He filled me with his spirit. And so I knew, I didn't know what it looked like.
Yeah.
And so I got involved in a recovery ministry in Praise Assembly.
Okay.
And got a chance to preach at the soup kitchen at Cook's Kettle.
Yeah.
Got booed off the stage. And then went back and did it again, you know. And then I began to preach for Mike Rogers. It was called God Addiction in the Bible at the time. Now it's called Higher Ground. Yep. But he gave me a shot. And then so that's when everything began for me.
Really? Mm-hmm. So then how did Freeway come about? You know, I mean, because you were at Praise and then, you know, Freeway started. How that, you know, whole connection began?
Well, I found out I wasn't Pentecostal. And I didn't know what Pentecostal was.
Right.
I used to make fun of Baptist people. Right. And I never knew I was Baptist because I didn't really know what Baptist was.
I love it, man.
And and I'm just being honest with you. There came a point in the ministry where things were happening at the church. Nothing negative. Same things that happen at every Pentecostal church. And I disagreed, but I just put it back. Mm-hmm. I just said, I'm not going to let that affect me. People being saved. I don't have to agree with everything. It's not my church. I'm a homeless guy in a shelter. Who am I, right? This guy the pastor is a good man, still friends. His name's Kenneth Fent. And, but it started eating me up. Yeah. And started a van ministry, began to pick people up, homeless people up, and take them to church with me. Got custody of my son. He was 2.5 years old.
Wow.
A year out of prison. Less than a year, I became a single father. This little boy found out he's my son. And
wow.
And so, I'm establishing myself in the community, working hard. I got my own place to live now. Well, I was invited to a Bible study that a guy named Mike A. had at a TLC coffee shop in a property, and on one of their properties. And I met Mike, and I met Rick Lechner. I met these other guys, and I was already doing ministry. I was already doing a type of outreach like Freeway is, but ministry is like a baby, Dylan. I can babysit your baby, but I can't tell you how to raise it. Mm-hmm. It was time for me to be a part of birthing a new ministry. And so I met with the pastor, and I told him, there were some things I disagreed with, and I appreciated him shepherding me all this time. And I told Dewey, I had to tell Dewey that, I don't agree with.
That's probably hard.
Oh, man. Yeah. I had no church to go to. I had nowhere to go. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew I had to follow my conviction.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only church my son had ever been to. Yeah. And with me, But anyway, we, Broadway Baptist Church at the time, wanted to do a recovery ministry. Mm-hmm. Rick Lechner, one of the co-founders, they had been on him, and he came out of addiction and crime, and he wanted to do a recovery ministry. And so God had begun to lay the groundwork. Yeah. And so I was already doing outreach. So I already had some plans, ideas, experience. I was already going to the homeless. I was already hitting the kettle. I was already involved in the Victory Mission. So we took all that. When I left Praise, it was a Sunday morning, the last time I went to church there. And I was preaching in the homeless shelter that I lived in on Sunday nights, second Sunday of the month. So I went there and preached, and Rick Lechner prayed with me on the altar. And we prayed for a ministry, Freeway. We didn't have a name for it. Yeah. But in the next day, the pastor called him and said, hey, they were in a building program, which is now Crossway Baptist Church. But he said, we don't want to wait to start the recovery ministry. We can start it now. And so we went and met with Brother Eddie Bumpers in his office. Yeah. And he gave us the green light to start Freeway as a ministry of that local church. And he gave us 3 vans to use. There was a white house in the back of the property that could hold about 40, 45 people in it. He said, if you ever outgrow that building, we'll get you another one. Mm. And so that Wednesday night, I was in church. And so I never missed a church service, even though I didn't have anywhere to go. Right. We outgrew our first building our first night. And God has blessed it ever since.
Wow. I've heard you tell that story, but because one of them, I believe it was, you see Mike H, right? Is that his name?
Mike A-Y-E.
So he's a UPS driver, is that right? Mm-hmm. And that's what I love. Just you guys tell that story of you guys were just hungry for the Lord. And man, he blessed you guys so much, And so because now, how many do you guys run every single week?
Well, it depends. So now we're a nonprofit. Yeah. Each Freeway has a partner church. And so right now our numbers are high numbers for
COVID.
Yeah, so for COVID, I think a couple of weeks ago we had 350. Wow. But we've been running around 250. Yeah. On a Saturday, and then we have all our other freeways. Okay. So we reach about 1,000 people a week.
So amazing, man. And if somebody's hearing this and they're around town, I just encourage them to go, because that's what it's about. I'll tell you what's cool is before it was Crossway, you said it was what was the church?
Broadway Baptist.
Yeah. So I remember playing basketball a couple of times. I was just some punk kid on the north side of Springfield, and somebody's like, "Oh, we're gonna go to a church play basketball." I'm not playing church there, or I'm not playing basketball at this church. And I was just a kid. And so, now just full circle, I know so many people from that church, Freeway, that was Broadway, and just cool how all that goes full circle, But man, I just think mean, your story and everything that you've went through and all the things that, God has done through you guys, it just gives people then that inspiration that, man, God can use me. We're never too far gone. I mean, you give me inspiration for my family, and there's so many people who have individuals that are struggling with drugs, or, man, they're just like, man, there's no way that God's ever going to be able to redeem them. But, man, you're living proof of that. And I know, my cousin who passed away from a heroin overdose, Chet, and you were there that day, at his funeral. And, man, you sadly have watched so many people, pass away through overdoses and things like that. And, same with me. But, man, I'm just so thankful that people like you and so many other churches and organizations are making an impact, in our community, and reaching those people, But it all started, man, you were a drug addict. And then, man, you got locked up and you were hungry for God. And you just read his word like your life depended on it, because it did. And because of your obedience, not just one time, not a one-time thing, it's day in and day out. God continued to shape and mold you into who you are now, And I think that's so amazing. And tell me about your family now, because, dude, I gotta admit, I love watching these videos of you aggravating your son every once in a while, and stuff. But God has redeemed your family, What's that like?
So we adopted a little girl. She's the newest addition. Her name is Zenley Jean.
Yeah.
And she is 9 months old.
Wow.
And we've had her since birth. So we have a blended family. My wife, Charla, she went from a drug addict to a preacher's wife in 6 months. And we had 3.5 years of war.
Yeah.
And it's in the book.
Yeah.
Chapter 10 of Pit to Pulpit is called The Struggle of Two Wills.
Yeah.
And God redeemed our marriage. We'll be married 9 years in April.
Wow.
And but we have a great marriage.
Yeah.
But we have our struggles. But who doesn't, right? The busier I am, the busier she is.
Right.
But she doesn't get any pats on the back for her part. But anyway, so when I got married to my wife, she had a 13-year-old, an 18-year-old, and I had a 4-year-old. And we said, we're toxic relationships. I mean, anything had to do with romantic relationships, intimate relationships was toxic for both of us. So we had no clue what we were doing. So we put us all together in, this family, and it was really hard. But, today I have a 25-year-old stepdaughter named Ashlyn. She's a school teacher in Savannah, Georgia. I have a 22-year-old stepson named Chase. I'm just saying step so you understand that they were hers before we got married. Chase is a UPS truck driver, and he works for Majors Elite Cleaning. He likes to work. He likes FedEx. He likes FedEx. That's what he wants to do. He likes that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's his career. He's moving out next month. He's going to be on his own. He serves at Crossway and in the college ministry there. And then Keith is 13. I've had him since he was 2. Wow. And then Zenley Jean is 9 months old. And we adopted her.
Wow. And God's redeemed your family, and using it, John, out of everything that you've endured, man, all the things that you've done, for the Lord through the ministry, and I know it's, only him through you, but, man, you've been obedient. But whether you like it or not, people are looking to you, and they're like, man, if he can do it, maybe I can, Somebody's going to hear this right now, or they're going to share it to somebody who is struggling with drugs and feel like they cannot be used. And, I love the imagery of you being that drug addict who, man, you knew you smelled bad. You knew that, man, nobody will even want to be around you, but you were just so broken, and I love that because, we see where you're at now. There's somebody listening to this right now who doesn't have Freeway Ministry, doesn't have their family redeemed. They're just broken. Dude, what would you tell them right now?
The 3 excuses that people use when they're not ready. First thing, I like to ask questions. So the first question I ask someone who says they want help is this: are you willing to do whatever it takes?
Yeah.
That's a pretty good question to ask.
Yeah.
And so I would ask the person, are you willing to do whatever it takes? And that means you have to get rid of there's 3 excuses: relational, geographical, material. So if you're willing to walk away from any relationship, if you're willing to walk away from any material excuse, I got to stay here because I got this bill, I got this house, I got this car payment, I got this, if you're willing to walk away from any geographical location, then then I can help you. There's 2 questions that you have to be able to answer in life. One is, who are you? And the other one, what is your purpose?
Yeah.
And so if I ask you who you are, you need to be able to tell me that answer.
Right.
And it's not John Stroup.
Yeah.
It's not a father. It's not a husband. That's not who I am. I am a born-again, blood-bought Christian.
Right.
And I'm in Christ Jesus.
Right.
And my purpose is to enjoy God and glorify him forever.
Right.
And so I know who I am today, and I know what my purpose is.
Mm.
And so when I talk to someone, you know, your identity, who are you? What is your purpose? And so people are running and searching for that. And so if they're listening and you know, and they think that they're not worthy, they aren't worthy.
Yeah.
No one is, right? You're right. You're not. And
Right.
I'm not either. But
Yeah.
God is a graceful God. And he is, you know, the Bible says that a broken and contrite heart, oh God, you will not despise. And so I would say, are you done? Are you ready? Are you willing to do whatever it takes? And if you are, you can get help.
Yeah.
You know, you can get help if you're ready. But if you're not ready, if there's a but in there anywhere,
Right.
then you need to go back out and hit your head on the concrete a couple more times.
That's real. Dude, it's been an honor and privilege to have you here today. And one more time, where can people find your books and your resources and all that at?
Yeah, so our books are on Amazon,
Okay.
Kindle Unlimited, Kindle. It's just John Stroup, Pit to the Pulpit, or Stop Loving Your Kids to Death, which is the book on enabling. And then our website, freeway-ministries.com, or Facebook, Freeway Ministries.
Awesome. If somebody's hearing this and they want to give a donation, that's where it's at, freeway.com.
Yeah, freeway-ministries.com.
Man. Well, John, we appreciate you. Eternally grateful and excited to see how God's going to keep using you, man.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to this channel so that these episodes are sent to you each month, along with our Life and Leadership podcast that shares content about the behind the scenes in our own lives and also talk about various leadership principles that we found to be beneficial in our own life and ministry.